Hello and welcome back to the Chelmsford News Show. I'm Tom Christiano. Well, I'm very excited because we have a friend of mine tonight on the show. He's a police sergeant. His name is Sergeant Frank Goode. Welcome to the show, Sergeant.
Hi, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I know we have a lot to talk about tonight because you're the president of the Police Superior Officers
The
Union?
sergeant, the president of the Chelmsford Superior Officers Association, which represents the 8 sergeants in the Chelmsford Police Department.
And how long have you been the president of that union? I guess it is.
I don't know, maybe 10 years. I'd have to check
Oh,
the exact
that long?
number. Yes.
Wow, that's great.
Maybe 9 years. I'd have to check the exact numbers.
All the sergeants love you, I guess.
Well,
Frank.
or maybe I'm just doing a job they don't want to do.
I don't.
It's one or the other.
Yeah.
But anyways.
Yeah, so it's great that you're here on this show. I appreciate it, Frank, and so we'll hopefully have a good discussion, a good time.
I look forward to it.
So before we get into any issues, I thought maybe could you tell us a little bit about your background, Frank?
Sure. Like I said, my name's Frank Goode. I'm a sergeant with the police department. I've been on the police department since 1994. I've been a sergeant since 2007. Lifelong resident of Chelmsford, along with my wife, where we raised our kids. Only a couple of years there where we didn't live in town when we first got married.
Yeah.
Been on the job now 29 and a half years, so
Wow.
it's been a long run. So a few more years left, and maybe I'll get to retire, but we'll see.
Because you're probably eligible now after 20 years.
I mean,
aren't
to get a
people
full
most-
retirement, I'd need to, do like 3.5, 4 more years or something like that.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
so.
So that's one, and you're not tired of it yet? After
Well, it's been a
29
rough few years. I mean, we've had some, the last few years in town, and particularly with us, with the situation with not having a contract now for
Yes.
almost 6 years, and just what, the climate in society following the George Floyd death and the defunding of the police, and we felt it here, and it's tough to be painted with a broad brush for an incident that happened, 1,500 miles away. I mean, even in town, we had the Racial Equity Diversion Inclusion Committee, who one of its members said that he believed all cops were the B word, ICAB. And
Really?
Yeah, and not one member of that
committee dissented? That's amazing.
Said anything opposing to it, which included the town clerk, a teacher, and that was pretty, offensive.
Oh, that's too bad,
Yeah, so
Frank.
it hasn't been great. It's been a rewarding career, but like I said, it's been a more difficult past few years. And the select board refused to sign a simple proclamation recognizing the police.
Really?
A few years ago. Well, again, it was in the heat of nobody wanted to say the wrong thing to upset whoever, the whole cancel culture.
Oh,
so
that's
again,
too bad.
we're fighting through it. We're focused on some big issues at hand here, and but the majority of the citizens of this town are outstanding people, and there was as many people who were giving us a hard time. There was double that who were giving us more support. So we really appreciate that.
if not more. Just to let you know, Frank, on the Chelmsford News Group, yesterday or the day before, this woman talked about some Chelmsford police sergeants and maybe sergeant and another officer who helped a boy who was hit by the car on the bicycle.
I was there that night,
And I've never seen so many thumbs up and comments.
A nice Facebook. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on social media, but it was shown to me.
Oh, I see.
And it was, I really don't want to go too much into that, but he was a very lucky kid.
Yeah.
And, I'm glad she was appreciative, but that's what we do, right?
Yeah, but that's what
and she was very appreciative, and it was really nice for her to post all those nice things.
And she wrote it in fact,
Yes.
I wrote
It was
a
very
comment.
eloquent.
She
It was
wrote
very
it very
good.
well.
Yeah.
She recommended everybody wear helmets on the bicycles, which I seconded that. So it was, and it shows how many people in Chelmsford really appreciate the police.
There are a lot, and we appreciate every one of them, yeah.
So, Frank, were you going to say anything more about the background?
Well, you had mentioned that we haven't had a contract for almost 6 years now, 5 years, 10 months, and there was some bad things that happened, and we filed some complaints with the Department of Labor Relations. Where we went to hearing. We're currently awaiting decisions on 2 separate but related DLR cases. Just to note that the town manager has already spent $260,000 fighting cases he knew he could never win and trying to defend the indefensible. Wow. I'm going to try to give you the Reader's Digest version. I apologize ahead of time. I brought notes because there is still, even in the Reader's Digest version, ton of material and if I don't use notes, I'll be all over the map. So
Yes, great.
here we go. So our complaints in the first case can be broken down into three areas: violations of law during the arbitration process, violations of law that occurred during the presentation of the arbitration award at town meeting, and then the town's failure to produce relevant documents, which he's required to produce by law. These cases are all about process, what's allowed and what's not. So to start, I want to give you a background and explain the process. So the collective bargaining process starts with negotiations between the union and the town. You determine a set number of meetings you're going to have, you make proposals. Hopefully, over time, you come to an agreement, you sign an MOA,
Yes.
it gets approved, it goes to the town for vote,
Yeah.
and you have a contract.
Yeah.
If you don't come to an agreement, you reach impasse.
Yeah.
And once you reach impasse, you reach out to the Joint Labor Management Committee, and you get a mediator to help assist with these negotiations. Again, hoping that you come up with an agreement. If not, you file for a 3A hearing with the JLMC, where you can request that they take jurisdiction, and then they will order a formal interest
Could you
arbitration.
define JLMC?
Joint Labor Management Committee.
Right. Is
So
that a
it's-
state organization?
It's a state organization that was established in 1978 to help resolve contract disputes for police and fire.
Right.
So anyways, so let me just describe, we went to arbitration, let me describe what formal arbitration is. It's a tripartite arbitration panel is selected. So the neutral arbitrator is chosen by the town and the union through a selection process. The management and labor arbitrator is assigned by the JLMC, and their role is to be an arbitrator on a tripartite board, but to give industrial knowledge from their side of the knowledge, management and labor.
Yeah.
Eventually, an arbitration hearing is held. The evidence is entered in through witness testimony. The neutral arbiter, after the hearing, will close the hearing, which means no additional information can be added in, no new arguments can be made. Post-hearing brief deadline is set by the neutral. Briefs are then submitted by that deadline, and the briefs can only include things that were brought up during the actual arbitration hearing. The arbitrators then hold confidential deliberations, and then they decide on the terms of the award. The arbitration award is issued when it comes out to both parties simultaneously. Now remember that, because that's important. The award is binding on both parties, and the award must be presented positively at town meeting, the same way as if a negotiated settlement needs to be supported. So that's how the process is supposed to work. Now I'm going to tell you what happened in our case. So in 2016, we negotiated a contract with the town manager and signed an MOA, and we were told the MOA was brought to the select board for their approval. Well, then we were told that the select board didn't approve it. So we were definitely shocked and taken back by that, because that had never happened ever in Chelmsford. So we had serious concerns about what was really going on. Now, I'm going to circle back to that, because that's case number 2. So at that point in the process, we decided we were at impasse. So we moved to JLMC, mediation. We had no settlement. Went to the 3A hearing. JLMC took jurisdiction and ordered a formal arbitration. The arbitrators were assigned, and in this case, the neutral was selected was Beth Ann Wolfson. The management panel arbitrator was Andrew Flanagan, who happens to be the Andover town manager, and the labor panel arbitrator was Alan Andrews, who works for Lawrence PD. We held the arbitration, as I described earlier, and it was completed. The neutral closed the hearing. No new evidence can be entered. Post-hearing brief was set. Post-hearing briefs were submitted. So after a period of time, and then after many delays, the arbitration award came out, and it was released on February 4th, 2019, to both parties at the same time. So we thought. This was also the day of a scheduled special town meeting. The award was for 9% over 3 years and was not unanimous. So that meant one of the arbiters dissented. In this case, the dissenting opinion came from the management panel arbiter, Andrew Flanagan. We read over it. The arguments in the dissent were complete fabrication and misrepresented the award. FinCom held a meeting just before the special town meeting for about 15 to 20 minutes to vote on whether they were going to support this arbitration award during the meeting. Mr. Cohen presented the award to the town meeting, qualifying his support by stating, under the law, the town manager and the select board are mandated to present this award favorably. FinCom was then asked for their recommendation, and FinCom advised that they were unanimously opposing funding the award. Town meeting reps then questioned FinCom as to why they were unanimously opposing it. Chairman James Clancy proclaimed that there was a dissenting opinion by one of the arbitrators, and the Finance Committee agreed with them. So Clancy then read aloud the dissenting opinion, advising it was by arbitrator Andrew Flanagan, while Anita Tanini, another Finance Committee member, distributed copies of this dissent and lobbied town meeting reps to vote against it. After much discussion and misrepresentations about the award and questions, and how the process would be if this award was voted down, a vote was taken and the funding article was defeated.
Do you know by what numbers
I
approximately?
don't. Okay. It was by a lot.
By a lot, I see, yeah.
Failure to fund an arbitration award had never happened before in Chelmsford, ever. Amazingly, this award was worth 9% over 3 years.
Yeah.
3 months prior, the Patrolman's arbitration award, which was valued at 9.35%, was funded with a 135-to-1 vote with no debate or no questions.
That's very similar to yours, right? The other, it's all 9.
Theirs was worth more. Yet the town meeting reps were tricked into thinking this award was going to bankrupt the town. Ours was worth less. It was immediately apparent to me and everyone who watched in our group that Mr. Cohen had failed to support the award as required by law. He stood silent in the face of opposition, and he failed to correct the record regarding misrepresentations that were being made by FinCom, and then questions and comments and answers that were, being to the town meeting reps. So, suspecting foul play, been around a long time. Walks like a duck, talks like a duck. It's a duck. Within a few days, I began a public records campaign, including all town communications surrounding our arbitration and all legal invoices. We immediately learned that on that day, 2/4/19, Mr. Cohen had emailed James Clancy the award and stated that he and the select board were required by law to support the arbitration award. However, the Finance Committee had no such constraint. That's a tell, a wink and a nod. We then began receiving copies of the legal invoices from the town's Labor Council. Shockingly, we saw an entry that said draft dissenting opinion for the management panel arbitrator, as well as billing for strategizing about the public records request. This confirmed the foul play that we suspect. Now, Tom, do you know why this is improper and why the town could never legally write the dissenting opinion for an arbitration award? I mean, do you have an idea of why?
No,
Okay.
well, not that I could articulate right now.
Well, I'll explain it to you.
Yeah.
Because the dissenting opinion is part of the award. So how can they write a dissent to an award they don't have yet?
Oh.
This revealed that the town had knowledge of the decision before the union did, and the town actively was lobbying against the award through the management panel arbitrator. The town was not authorized to even have the award at that point, but yet they wrote a dissenting opinion to it.
Oh.
That was part of the award that went out simultaneously to both sides.
I see.
Any reasonable person can infer that the Finance Committee never actually read the arbitration award, the majority opinion, or if they did read it, they ignored it and relied solely on the dissenting opinion after Cohen emailed Clancy telling FinCom they were under no constraint to support it. So this obviously triggered a much larger investigation by me, the sergeants, and our attorneys, which now included Paul Cohen, Andrew Flanagan, FinCom, and all the agents of the town who were involved. Public records requests were made of Andrew Flanagan, and he replied with incomplete and sanitized documents. Our attorney advised Flanagan that he and the town of Andover would face other legal consequences or actions if he failed to turn over the requested records. Flanagan quickly acquiesced.
Good.
And within a day, we received voluminous incriminating emails which revealed the entire scheme to interfere with the arbitration and subvert the town meeting vote. These records blew this case wide open. We got a box, FedEx box this thick with records.
Wow.
So myself and the attorney proceeded to create a timeline investigation to just show how it all broke down and using these emails to outline the violations. We filed complaints with the Department of Labor Relations, who quickly proceeded to issue numerous probable cause complaints. So what else these public records reveal? Andrew Flanagan and Mark Terry had extensive ex parte communications following the close of the hearing, right? The close of the hearing, no more talking. Ex parte meaning one side talking to the jury or to the judge or the hearing officer without the other party's knowledge. Yeah. Andrew Flanagan shared these communications with the town that were marked confidential. These communications between the three arbitrators regarding were regarding confidential deliberations. We later learned that immediately following the arbitration held at the town hall, the 3 arbitrators held a confidential deliberation about the hearing that had just taken place. Andrew Flanagan left that deliberation, proceeded right to the town manager's office, where he met with Paul Cohen, attorney Mark Terry, and Mike McCall. Flanagan revealed the content of the confidential deliberations and revealed that the neutral was going to go with the numbers from the failed MOA, which I've spoken about earlier.
Yeah.
Flanagan then advised Terry how to craft his post-hearing brief and attempt to change the position, arguing certain points. Line items and legal bills revealed that every time Terry had ex parte communications with Flanagan, Terry immediately contacted Cohen to discuss same. Neutral arbitrator Wilson, who was the neutral, produced a draft award based on the panel's confidential deliberations. She shared the draft with the 2 other arbitrators. Flanagan immediately forwarded the draft, marked confidential, to Terry, who shared it with Cohen. Flanagan wrote, "Let's discuss." Terry showed he was upset by the draft award and said, "You've got to be kidding me." The email evidence reveals that an all-out effort by Flanagan and Terry then took place with Cohen's knowledge to get the neutral to change and lower the value of the draft award. Terry submitted new arguments to Flanagan. Again, this is all after the hearings closed, for him to present to the neutral as his own work, as Flanagan's work. Flanagan just cut and pasted Terry's emails, only changing enough to conceal that the arguments were actually coming from the town. Just shows he was hiding it, right? It's not proper. The emails show that the neutral, Beth Ann Wolfson, was baffled by these new arguments because she stated, well, my notes during the confidential deliberations don't indicate these oppositions and arguments. So where is this coming from? Flanagan advised her that without these changes, he would dissent. Hoping for a unanimous decision, she did alter the overall value of the award by removing a $500 stipend and moving the last 1.5% increase to the last day of the contract. So she actually lowered the draft award because she wanted to get them all on board, not knowing that this was all taking place behind her back. Emails show this change was not good enough for Flanagan in the town, believe it or not, and Flanagan told the neutral he would dissent. Where do you hear this? We later learned from text messages that Mark Terry, the town's attorney, asked Flanagan to dissent and offered to write the dissent, and Flanagan could sign it as his own. And Flanagan agreed. Another very important thing, we later learned through testimony that Paul Cohen had pre-approved Terry's ideas to write the dissent, pre-authorized the town paying for it, I think it was like $273, and pre-approved the content of this fictitious, fabricated dissenting opinion. This all occurred without the knowledge of the neutral, the labor panel member, or the union. Remember, all this occurred after the close of the hearing. And much of it occurred after the submission of post-hearing briefs. It's amazing, Tom. The neutral arbitrator Wolfson testified that all of her communications were marked confidential, and Flanagan was not authorized to share any of the communications or the draft or the final award to the town. During testimony, Mr. Cohen acknowledged that he knew the deliberations amongst the arbitrators were confidential and were supposed to be done behind closed doors, his words. Yet he participated in the scheme anyway. His knowledge of what was going on was revealed by meeting with Flanagan following the arbitration in his office, and as well as the legal bills, which clearly reflected his participation. This is collusion, and the parties were conspiring to interfere with the confidential deliberative process and to undermine the vote of the town meeting. Text messages between Flanagan and Terry revealed that they both advised each other that they had received public records requests from me, and they needed to talk. They were like, like this is the oh boy moment, right? They're on to us. It should be noted that the very first day of the hearing, the town stipulated to the majority of these facts and allegations. They had no choice. The evidence was overwhelming and indisputable. Now, the presentation at town meeting. After presenting the award to town meeting, Cohen qualified his support of the award by stating, under the law, the manager and select board are mandated to present this award favorably, something he's never said before. The dissenting opinion was the only rationale used by FinCom to not support the award. It was read by Clancy, distributed by Anita Tanini, and the town meeting reps assumed it was a thoughtful analysis by one of the arbitrators, but it wasn't. The dissenting opinion was written by the town attorney, and its content was approved by Mr. Cohen in an apparent attempt to subvert the funding vote. It was the town's arguments against the award. The actual award was not read or distributed. The majority opinion had addressed the bogus arguments in the dissent, and it was clear the majority had already rejected these arguments. Mr. Cohen stood silent as his lie about the author of the dissenting opinion was told about, he stood silent while this lie about the author of the dissenting opinion was told to the elected legislative body of our town during a town meeting which is governed by state open meeting laws. The town meeting reps were lied to and misled right before the vote. It's clear and any reasonable person can infer that the reason the town wrote the dissenting opinion was so Mr. Cohen's opposition to the award could be heard through Andrew Flanagan, something he knew he was barred from doing himself. Mr. Cohen stood silent as misrepresentations about the award were made and what the town meeting reps thought would happen if they voted it down. They were led to believe they could send it back to the arbitrators to address these perceived miscalculations and misvaluations that actually didn't exist. And this award could be brought back at Springtown meeting and they would have a chance to vote on it again. They had no idea there was no mechanism for that to happen. Mr. Cohen stood silent while the town meeting reps were misled again. Oh. The case law is clear on this type of situation. In the face of opposition to an award, the town manager is required to not stand silent, as his silence can be interpreted as being agreement with the opposition, which is clearly what it was, because they wrote it. So that's, in a nutshell, that case. The last part of that case is the failure of the town to turn over documents. The union requested relevant documents for this case. The town, in violation of the law, refused to turn them over. The documents pertain to the executive session minutes related to the vote for the failed MOA in 2016. Again, I just need to remind you, the town has already spent $260,000 in counting. The cost to fund the award was $108,000. So these cases should have never gone to hearing. I mean, the town should have just owned its illegal behavior when they were called out on it, when we had the evidence and showed it to them. During the hearings, Mr. Cohen, Attorney Terry, Andrew Flanagan, James Clancy's testimony was nothing short of disgraceful, and much of it was proven to be not credible at best. All of these participants started pointing the finger at everyone else. You know that game? Not me, them. Yeah, they all had an excuse. The town had a list of witnesses they planned on calling from the JLMC. These witnesses were supposed to testify that no one did anything wrong on the town side. The town only called one witness, Mr. George Driscoll, who's an attorney from the JLMC. It was immediately apparent that he was not going to carry the town's water, and they ended the questioning relatively quickly and rested their case without ever presenting a defense, because they did not have a defense. It's amazing. So this brings us to the second case, which is a little shorter, which is actually the prequel to the first case. In June of 2016, we had negotiated and signed a 3-year MOA with the town manager. He advised that he had presented to the select board and they voted against it. It was shocking. It's never happened in Chelmsford before. We later believed that the town manager had never told the Board of Selectmen that it was actually an agreed upon signed MOA, and we questioned the town manager about that. He told us we just need to negotiate further and take less than the agreed upon amounts. And we refused to negotiate against ourselves since, he was the employee tasked with negotiating these contracts, and he had agreed to these terms of the MOA, and he's the town manager, and by signing the MOA with us, it means that the raises are appropriate and the town can afford it. So why would we negotiate this against ourselves? So we said, no, we're at impasse. We'll go to mediation. Yeah. But like I said, we continued to question if the board even knew what they were voting on, and Cohen insisted the board knew it was an MOA. We're at impasse. We'll go to mediation. We went to mediation, obviously unsuccessful, because we went to arbitration. And we eventually obtained the copies of these executive session minutes surrounding the vote on our MOA that they wouldn't turn over, when the town accidentally released these documents on the town's public records portal. These minutes revealed Mr. Cohen had presented our MOA as a counteroffer, not as a negotiated MOA. Additional executive session minutes following the defeat of the arbitration award reflect that Selectman Diggs inquired about the failed MOA referenced in the arbitration award. Mr. Diggs stated he didn't ever remember an MOA with the sergeants ever being voted on. One can assume this is the reason why Mr. Cohen and the town fought so hard not to turn over these documents as required by law. Mr. Cohen knew he had violated the law by misrepresenting the status of our negotiations and failing to support a signed, negotiated MOA. Ironically, the only reason why we obtained these documents was due to an egregious error by him and his IT guy by improperly putting them on the town portal. Once again, immediately filed complaints with the DLR. New probable cause complaints were issued. During the first case, Mr. Cohen testified under oath about this MOA and was questioned by our attorney as to how the agreement came to be. Mr. Cohen advised that it was just something the union wrote up and he agreed to present it to the select board to see if it would pass. He denied it was an agreed upon MOA and that he had negotiated and that he had actually made changes to before signing. In the second case, everyone involved in negotiating the MOA were called as witnesses, including his own HR director, who agreed that this was an agreed upon negotiated MOA, which Mr. Cohen participated in by negotiating for the town. Mr. Cohen took the stand in the second case, now faced with the testimony he heard from the other involved participants, and he once again asked about the MOA, how it came to be. He then changed his position and admitted his previous testimony only 3 months prior and under oath was untrue and not accurate. Former select board members were called as witnesses and they testified that they were not told it was an MOA but instead referred to as a counteroffer. Current select board member Wojcik testified Mr. Cohen never supported the terms of it. Select board Wojcik was the only select board member who testified that she knew it was an MOA. When questioned as to why she allowed the minutes she reviewed and voted on to be approved, to be voted on and approved, to be reflected as a counteroffer in the minutes, she gave the ludicrous reasoning, we use the terms memorandum of agreement and counteroffer interchangeably. Clearly not the same meaning. During this hearing, it was abundantly clear that Mr. Cohen never told the select board this was a signed MOA. Again, placing Mr. Cohen in violation of the law, which ultimately led to the parties going to arbitration. So that was the end of that.
We only have 1 minute left, but yeah, thank you so much, Frank, for going through everything so thoroughly. I appreciate.
I hope you could understand it. It was the Reader's Digest version.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, and I did read the
more
background information you sent me, and so to be fair, I'd like to invite the town manager to come on the show if he'd like. And he could present his point of view.
Absolutely. There's always two sides to a story.
And I also hope that we could get this settled very soon because
we've tried.
The money is continuing, right, with legal fees, et cetera.
Counting every day.
And also, did you mention it's like triple damages or more?
Well, if this results in a lawsuit later on, there's the potential for triple damages, and the town has already been advised they're not insured.
Yeah, I saw that. We're not going to be insured by somebody to back up the town. So it seems that the town should do everything they can to
You would think that we've had
this.
numerous attempts to settle this, but I'm going to tell you, it's been posturing on Mr. Cohen's part.
How long could this continue, though?
Well, I think ultimately it's going to come down to the DLR decisions being, it's been 10 months for the first case since post-hearing briefs. It's been 7 months on the second case, so we're expecting these decisions any day.
Oh, any day.
Yeah.
And then what will? Once that decision comes down, is that it? Will it be, or will the town?
Then if we win, the award has to be presented properly and supported properly at town meeting without the lies.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Because you mentioned that the patrolman got a little bit more, a little over 9% over 3 years. The sergeants presented about the same amount, a little bit less. And it wasn't approved. That's what's confusing
because
to
of
me.
the dissenting opinion and the finance committee not recommending its support. That's what that whole meeting was about. How could they not support it? Well, it was a trick.
Well, I don't know why they would come up with the dissenting opinion if they give the patrolmen a little bit more.
That's a good question for Mr. Cohen.
Yeah, and I would like to ask you that, Paul.
Yeah.
But thank you very much, Frank, for being on the show. You did a great job with presenting.
I'm sorry if I was long-winded, but
no, not at all. I appreciate it because it makes my job a lot easier. No, and you've presented it thoroughly. It's a very complicated case in a way.
And I tried.
So it takes time.
It does.
And I appreciate it very much. Thank you very much, Sergeant, for being on the show.
Oh, anytime. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Ciao.